What if the very thing you think attracts women is actually repelling them? There's a man checking his phone for the third time in 10 minutes. He sent a thoughtful message hours ago. Still no reply. His mind races. Did he say something wrong? Should he send another text? Meanwhile, another man hasn't looked at his phone all day. He's been focused on his work, his goals, his own inner world. When he finally checks his messages that evening, he finds 3 texts from women who've been thinking about him. What separates these two men isn't looks, money, or charm. It's something deeper, something most men never understand about the nature of desire itself. We've been taught backwards. We think attraction is about giving more, doing more, being more available. But human psychology works in reverse. The harder you chase, the faster someone runs. The more you offer freely, the less valuable it becomes. 500 years ago, Niccolò Machiavelli studied power in all its forms. Not just political power, but the invisible forces that make one person magnetic and another invisible. He understood something most men today have forgotten, that attraction isn't about what you give, it's about what you withhold. Not through manipulation, but through genuine self-respect. Machiavelli wasn't writing about dating, he was writing about human nature, about why people are drawn to strength and repelled by weakness, about why scarcity creates desire and abundance kills it. These principles haven't changed in 5 centuries because they're rooted in the psychology of value itself. By the end of this exploration, I'll share Machiavelli's most dangerous insight about desire, the one that explains why scarcity creates hunger and abundance kills it. Why the man who needs nothing commands everything. Here's the uncomfortable truth most men refuse to face. The very behaviors they think demonstrate love actually demonstrate desperation. Think about the last time you really wanted something, a job, a friendship, an opportunity. Remember that energy of need, of reaching, of trying to fill a gap inside yourself. Now think about things that came easily, the opportunities that seemed to find you rather than the other way around. Which felt more valuable? This is the paradox that destroys most men's chances before they begin. They approach attraction from emptiness, trying to use someone else's interest to fill a void in themselves. But emptiness can't attract fullness. Need can't magnetize abundance. Women sense this immediately. When a man's energy screams, "I need you to validate me," something deep in her psychology recoils. Not because she's cruel, but because neediness feels like a weight she doesn't want to carry. Machiavelli understood this in every area of human interaction. People naturally move toward strength and away from weakness, toward confidence and away from desperation, toward those who seem complete and away from those who need completion. Most men give their power away before the interaction begins. They decide she's more valuable than they are. They offer their time, attention, and energy freely, then feel confused when these gifts aren't treasured. But value isn't determined by the giver. It's determined by scarcity, by what someone must invest to obtain something. When you make yourself constantly available, you make yourself common. And common things don't inspire desire. Rule 1, the art of strategic withdrawal. Power flows toward those who don't desperately need it. This was Machiavelli's first lesson about human nature, and it applies as much to attraction as politics. The moment you become emotionally dependent on someone's response, you hand them all the power. The moment you stop chasing, something shifts. The balance tips back toward you. Strategic withdrawal isn't about playing games or being cold. It's about genuinely having a life worth protecting. Think about men who naturally attract women without trying. They're not running elaborate schemes, they're simply living full lives. They have work that matters, goals they're pursuing, friends they value. When a woman enters their world, she's welcomed, but she's not the center of it. This creates a completely different dynamic. Instead of revolving their world around her, they invite her to join their existing orbit. Instead of texting constantly, they reach out when they have something meaningful to share. What happens next often surprises men who've spent years chasing. She starts reaching out more. She begins investing effort to capture his attention. She wonders what he's doing when he's not responding immediately. That curiosity, that's the beginning of genuine interest. Machiavelli observed that people naturally value what they have to work for. When you're always available, always responding, always accommodating, you remove all sense of challenge from the interaction. You become like background music, pleasant perhaps, but not particularly noticeable. But when you have genuine boundaries around your time and attention, when your availability is limited because your life is full, suddenly your presence becomes something valuable. The man who practices strategic withdrawal doesn't ignore women to manipulate them. He's genuinely engaged with his own purpose. When he's with her, he's fully present. When he's not, he's focused on his own world. The withdrawal isn't the goal. The fullness of your own life is the goal. When you genuinely don't need someone else's attention to feel complete, you naturally become less available. Not through strategy, but through authentic engagement with your own purpose. Rule 2, the power of concealed depth. Never show all your cards at once. This was one of Machiavelli's core strategies for maintaining power, but it reveals something deeper about human psychology. We are naturally drawn to incomplete pictures. Our minds want to fill in the gaps, to solve the puzzle, to understand the mystery. Most men approach attraction like an open book. First conversation, they share their life story. First date, they reveal their deepest fears and dreams. They think transparency equals intimacy. That vulnerability creates connection. But intimacy isn't built through information dumps. It's built through gradual revelation, through earning the right to know someone's depths. When you reveal everything immediately, you rob the other person of the pleasure of discovery. Think about the most captivating people you've known. Were they the ones who told you everything about themselves in the first hour? Or were they the ones who revealed themselves slowly in layers, leaving you always curious to know more? Machiavelli understood that information is power, not because knowledge itself is power, but because the control of information creates psychological leverage. When someone knows everything about you immediately, they can categorize you, file you away, stop being curious about you. But when you maintain some mystery, when you reveal yourself gradually, you create what psychologists call the curiosity gap, the space between what someone knows and what they want to know. That gap, that's where interest lives. This doesn't mean being secretive or dishonest. It means understanding the difference between privacy and secrecy. Privacy is choosing not to share everything all at once. Secrecy is hiding things that should be revealed. The mysterious man isn't hiding his flaws or pretending to be someone he's not. He's simply allowing the other person to discover who he is over time. Each conversation reveals something new. Each interaction adds another layer to their understanding of him. Mystery works because it respects the natural rhythm of human connection. When you try to fast-track this process by revealing everything immediately, you actually slow it down. You overwhelm instead of intrigue. This is what Machiavelli meant when he spoke about concealing your full strength. Not to deceive, but to maintain the element of discovery that keeps others engaged and curious about who you really are. Rule 3, emotional sovereignty. A prince who cannot control his emotions cannot control his kingdom. Machiavelli wrote these words about political leadership, but they reveal a deeper truth about all human relationships. The person who masters their emotional state holds the real power in any interaction. Not because they're cold or unfeeling, but because they're not enslaved by every shift in mood or circumstance. Watch how most men react when things don't go according to plan. She takes longer to respond to a text, and suddenly he's analyzing every word of his last message. She cancels dinner plans, and he spirals into doubt about her interest. She mentions another man in passing, and jealousy floods his system like poison. These reactions feel natural, even justified, but they reveal something that kills attraction faster than almost anything else. A man who cannot regulate his own emotional state appears fundamentally unstable, and instability, no matter how understandable, is not attractive. Women are watching for this all the time, usually without realizing it. They're observing how you handle uncertainty, disappointment, stress. Something deep in their psychology is asking a crucial question. Is this someone who can handle life's inevitable challenges, or will he crumble when things get difficult? Emotional sovereignty doesn't mean suppressing your feelings or pretending everything is fine when it isn't. It means not allowing external circumstances to dictate your internal state. It means responding to situations rather than reacting to them. When she doesn't text back immediately, the emotionally sovereign man doesn't create stories about what this means. He simply continues with his day. When plans change unexpectedly, he adapts without drama. When she tests his boundaries or patience, he remains calm and centered. This isn't about being emotionless, it's about being emotionally free. Free from the tyranny of needing constant reassurance. Free from the exhaustion of trying to control other people's behavior. Free from the anxiety that comes from making someone else responsible for your happiness. Machiavelli understood that emotional reactivity is a form of weakness that others can exploit. When your emotions are predictable, when people know exactly which buttons to push to get a reaction from you, you become easy to manipulate. But when you remain composed, regardless of what's happening around you, you maintain your power. In the context of attraction, emotional sovereignty is magnetic because it signals strength without aggression, confidence without arrogance. It shows that you're not desperately dependent on her approval for your emotional well-being. You want her company, but you don't need it to feel stable. This is what Machiavelli called the foundation of all power. Not the ability to control others, but the ability to control yourself. And in relationships, the person who has mastered themselves naturally becomes the one others are drawn to follow. Rule 4, boundaries as magnetic force. Respect is not given freely. It must be commanded through consistent standards. Most men believe that kindness and accommodation will win a woman's heart. They think that saying yes to everything, tolerating any behavior, and being endlessly understanding will demonstrate their value as a partner. But this approach backfires in a way that most men never understand. When you accept treatment that you don't respect, you teach others that you don't respect yourself. And if you don't respect yourself, why should anyone else? Machiavelli observed that leaders who failed to enforce boundaries inevitably lost their kingdoms, not because they were overthrown by enemies, but because their own people stopped taking them seriously. The same principle applies in every human relationship. Without boundaries, respect erodes. Without respect, attraction dies. Here's what most men miss about boundaries. They're not walls you build to keep people out. They're standards you maintain to keep yourself intact. When you have clear boundaries, you're not being difficult or demanding. You're being clear about how you expect to be treated. A woman can sense immediately whether a man has boundaries or not. She feels it in how he carries himself, how he responds to challenges, how he handles situations where his standards might be compromised. When you have no boundaries, every interaction becomes a negotiation. She can push a little further each time, see what you'll tolerate, discover where your limits actually are. This isn't because she wants to hurt you, it's because humans naturally test the structures around them to understand how solid they are. But when you have clear, consistent boundaries, something different happens. She knows exactly where the lines are. There's no confusion, no testing, no wondering how far she can push. This creates a sense of safety and security that most women rarely experience with men. The man with boundaries doesn't get angry when someone crosses a line. He doesn't fight or argue or try to convince them to treat him better. He simply maintains his standard. If the behavior continues, he removes himself from the situation. Not dramatically, not to punish, but because he values himself too much to accept treatment that doesn't align with his worth. This creates a powerful dynamic. Instead of chasing respect, he commands it. Instead of begging to be treated well, he expects it. And when someone is around a person who genuinely expects good treatment, they tend to rise to that expectation. Setting boundaries doesn't push good people away, it attracts them. The woman who respects herself wants to be with a man who also respects himself. She doesn't want someone she can walk all over. She wants someone who values himself enough to maintain his standards. The most magnetic quality isn't having no standards. It's having standards that you maintain with quiet confidence, without anger or drama, simply because you respect yourself too much to accept less than you deserve. Rule 5, the sovereign self. A man must rule his own kingdom before he can attract allies to join it. This is perhaps Machiavelli's most profound insight, and the one that separates men who command attraction from those who beg for it. Sovereignty isn't about dominating others, it's about being completely self-governed, self-directed, and self-contained. Most men approach relationships from a place of incompleteness. They're looking for someone to fill a void, to give their life meaning, to make them feel whole. But emptiness cannot attract fullness. A man who needs a woman to complete him offers her nothing but the burden of his incompleteness. The sovereign man is different. He has built a life that he genuinely enjoys living. He has work that fulfills him, goals that drive him, passions that sustain him. When a woman enters his world, she's not filling a gap. She's adding richness to something that was already complete. This completeness is magnetic in a way that desperation never can be. When you're genuinely content with your own company, when you have a mission that excites you, when your life has structure and purpose independent of any relationship, you become someone worth knowing. Think about the difference between these two invitations. The first man says, "Please be with me because I'm lonely and need someone to make me happy." The second says, "I'm building something beautiful with my life. Would you like to be part of it?" Which invitation would you accept? Sovereignty means never abandoning your path for anyone. If you have a business to build, you build it. If you have fitness goals, you pursue them. Your priorities don't shift just because someone attractive enters your life. This doesn't mean you're inflexible or unwilling to make time for relationships. It means your time is valuable because it's already allocated to meaningful pursuits. When you choose to spend time with someone, it carries weight because it's a conscious choice, not a default option. Most men make the mistake of reorganizing their entire life around a woman's schedule. They drop their plans when she calls, they abandon their routines to accommodate her preferences, they sacrifice their goals to prove their devotion. This feels romantic to them, but it has the opposite effect on her. When you abandon your mission for someone, you communicate that your mission wasn't that important to begin with. But when you maintain your direction while making space for her in your life, you show her something rare, a man who knows who he is and where he's going. The sovereign man brings her into his gravitational pull rather than orbiting around hers. He has his own rhythm, his own priorities, his own sense of purpose. She doesn't have to carry the weight of being his entire world because he already has a world that's worth inhabiting. Machiavelli understood that true power comes from not needing anything from anyone. When you genuinely don't need someone's approval to feel good about yourself, their approval becomes more valuable when it's given. When you don't need their presence to feel complete, their presence becomes a gift rather than a necessity. This is why sovereignty is so attractive. It signals to others that you're not looking for someone to save you, fix you, or complete you. You're looking for someone to journey with, to build something beautiful alongside, to share the abundance of an already full life. Women are particularly drawn to this quality because they've encountered so many men who shapeshift depending on who they're with. The man who has his own kingdom, who governs his own life with wisdom and strength, who needs nothing from her but wants her company. That man is rare, and rarity, as Machiavelli knew, is the foundation of all value. Here's what Machiavelli knew that most men never learn. Desire isn't created by giving more, it's created by being more. Every one of these rules points to the same fundamental truth. Attraction flows toward completeness, not toward need. Toward strength, not toward weakness. Toward those who have something to offer, not toward those who are desperately seeking something to receive. The man who stops chasing becomes worth chasing. The man who maintains mystery becomes worth discovering. The man who controls his emotions becomes worth respecting. The man who enforces boundaries becomes worth approaching carefully. The man who maintains his sovereignty becomes worth joining. This is Machiavelli's most dangerous insight about human nature. We don't desire what we can easily have. We desire what we must earn. We don't value what comes freely. We value what requires investment. We don't chase what chases us. We chase what remains just slightly out of reach. But here's the crucial point that separates manipulation from transformation. These aren't tactics to perform, they're qualities to embody. You don't pretend to have a full life to attract someone. You actually build a full life because it's worth building. You don't fake emotional stability to seem attractive. You develop genuine emotional mastery because it makes you free. When you truly embody these principles, something shifts. You're no longer trying to get something from relationships. You're offering something to them. You're not looking for someone to complete you. You're looking for someone worthy of your completeness. This is why scarcity creates hunger and abundance kills it. when your attention is scarce because your life is full, when your emotions are stable because you've done the inner work, when your boundaries are clear because you respect yourself, when your sovereignty is intact because you've built something worth protecting, you become someone worth wanting. The most attractive man isn't the one who needs women most. It's the one who needs them least, but chooses them anyway. Not from desperation, but from abundance. Not from emptiness, but from fullness. Not because he has to, but because he wants to. If this shifted something in how you see yourself and relationships, like this video, and tell me in the comments, is sovereignty something you're born with or something you must earn? These 5 rules aren't about manipulating women into wanting you. They're about becoming someone worth wanting. They're not tactics to perform, but truths to embody. When you stop chasing and start building, when you become mysterious through depth rather than deception, when you master your emotions instead of being mastered by them, when you command respect through self-respect, when you maintain your sovereignty while opening your heart, you don't just become more attractive to women. You become more attractive to life itself. The man who lives by these principles doesn't beg for love. He doesn't chase approval. He doesn't sacrifice his identity for temporary affection. He offers something much rarer. The opportunity to be with someone who is already whole, already grounded, already free. And that wholeness, that groundedness, that freedom, it's magnetic in ways that neediness never can be. Subscribe if this left you with something to think about.